Good morning. Welcome to this latest Cogito webinar. I'm Mark Drew, the Managing Director of Cogito, and as many of you know, we are a people insights business, and we thrive on sharing knowledge and data to organisations to help them to improve their people strategies. Today's webinar is our 15th event, but only our second webinar. So like everyone else this year, we've had to adapt and learn new skills and new ways of working. And the topic today is one which many of our network have asked us to cover this year, developing a high performance culture, something which is of continued importance to many of us as business leaders, as employees, and also HR professionals. And I'm delighted to introduce our speaker today, James Hampton, who is the Head of Development at Seasalt, one of the UK's most well-respected fashion brands. James is going to take you through the Seasalt journey and the role that he's played within that. So it won't just be about James today, we'd like you to contribute as well. So if you've got any points you'd like to raise or any comments you'd like to make, or even when James asks you to contribute with some questions he has, please use the question function by clicking on the question mark icon on your device. So it now leaves me to hand over to James to tell you the Seasalt story. James.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the introduction. Very briefly, so a bit of a background on me. I've been with Seasalt for about 3.5 years, nearly 4 years now, and my role is progressed from learning development manager to head of development and engagement in the last 18 months or so. And most of that work over that period of time has been working on performance. Before that, I worked in further education, both as a learning development manager and as a teacher. And then prior to that, I was in the Air Force for 9 years, where a lot of the work that I did was around sports performance, but also people development. So quite a lengthy sort of 20 years or so of working with people and working with performance. As Mark said, please, this is interactive. This isn't about me just talking at you for the next 35 minutes. I really would like you to sort of interact and share your thoughts and share your opinions, ask questions. So please do click on the question mark button and ask questions throughout. It might be that I answer them as we go through. So if that's the case, then that'd be great. But if there's anything left at the end, then we'll answer them. And if there's an opportunity, I encourage you to turn your mics on so that you can also ask any questions throughout at certain points. So let's get going. When we've been looking at performance across the business, is a growing business. Seasalt has been around, actually it's our 40th year next year, our 40th birthday. And throughout that, the last, I suppose, 15 years, it's been Seasalt. Before that, it was General Clothing. But my time and the last 5 years, the business has been growing around 28% year on year up until last year. And what we've been focusing on is how do we get more from our people, but also maintaining the value proposition of the business and ensuring that that we take people with us. So that's also been a huge part of what we do. I tend to kind of like going through these kind of webinars in a hopefully not too sporadic way, but we'll dance around a little bit between sort of strategy and people and look at what we mean by high performance and what that really looks like first of all, and make sure that we're taking both an organisational view, an individual view, and also at the end of a team view, because all of those are parts of the picture. For us, I wanted to start at this point of looking at what do our people really mean to us, and at Seasalt, they are very much a source of competitive advantage, because if we've got the right people in the right jobs doing the right things, performing at their best, then we should be outperforming our competitors. But what sometimes we tend to forget when we're looking at performance is that they're also our colleagues and friends, and they are people, they're human beings at the end of the day. And so what I want you to consider is both the business need for high performance, but also what do you want to get out of your people and why is that really, really important? From the organisational part of this, then that source of competitive advantage. This is a diagram from the book What is Your Competitive Advantage by Cliff Bowman and Paul Raspin, who are two professors at Cranfield University, and they talk about strategy and competitive strategy. I would encourage you to read their book. It's absolutely fantastic. But this model just starts to capture kind of where we're going to go, is that we've got to look at from a business perspective, and all of your businesses will be individual, different to ours. And I'll share my story, but it won't be the same as yours. You've got to understand where the business is going and what capabilities do you actually need for that business to be able to operate, and what are the enabling practices, the structure, the system, and culture that enables those capabilities to come to fruition, to be brilliant, and then start to develop some initiatives and some actions around it. So we start to have this wider view and we start to focus in. For me, performance and high performance is having this really overview of your business, really understanding of what you're trying to achieve and making sure that you've got the right people in the right places, doing the right things to achieve those stuff. And also with my learning and development hat on, making sure that you're continually improving on those things. And we'll come back to some of that continual improvement in a minute. First question then. So what I want to know from you is, why do you do performance reviews? Because performance reviews are sort of part of the issue here for me. So drop into the chat box or into the, I think you can put it into the, if we go chat box, hopefully you can put it in there. If not, then use the question mark button and put it into the questions bit. Just, I really would like to know why you do performance reviews at the moment. And Mark and Rory, if you're seeing these come in, I'm not seeing them come in at the moment. Okay, we've got some, cool. Brilliant. So to enable talent visibility, consistency, keep people focused on the objectives, to check in with them. Brilliant. Okay. To check how colleagues are feeling and to check in on their objectives. Yes, so there's a theme of objectives setting and making sure that they're on track. And that talent visibility. Monthly check-ins, brilliant. Objective setting every 90 days. Brilliant. So checking on well-being. So some of you are already, for me, moving ahead and in the world that we're kind of moving into. Basic tool for managing behaviour and performance, as well as being linked to reward and performance. Brilliant. Okay. And pay-related bonus. Yeah. Improve business performance. Bonus measurement. Okay. Cool. 1 more minute or so just to see if we can get some more in. Okay. Knowledge gap identification. Brilliant. Quarterly check-ins. Okay, cool. Brilliant. That's good. And so some of the things here is, we'll talk about using it for bonus is a common theme for performance reviews, to be able to allocate those bonuses to people. I'll be upfront with you. I'm not a big fan of the bonus side of things. I think it's more of an extrinsic type of motivation for people, and can cause you issues. I don't know whether that's the case, and I'd love to hear your perspectives on there. One last one in there that sort of says career aspirations for the employee to have an opportunity to reflect on the past year and goals for the next year. Okay, so that reflection is really, really important, isn't it? It's a summary of your ongoing personal development. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. There's some really good stuff coming in out there. What I'd like you to now think about is, why do you think your managers do performance reviews? And just drop those in there. So why do your managers or your leaders in your business, the people that are responsible for doing these performance reviews, because they're told to? Okay, cool. Thank you, Michelle. Brilliantly open and transparent. That's the way we want to go for the rest of this session. They like specific time to talk employees. Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Victoria. Some because they're told to, others because they understand the regulatory. Right, yeah, cool, that's it. Good. Yeah, you know, it's expected that, you know, not everyone in your team is always going to be able to, you know, to see it from the same perspective. Ensure we're on target to meet corporate plan, update business issues, set goals and expectations in the period. So that because they have to, they don't. Right, okay, so they don't leak. Okay. So that's another part of the issue. Okay, cool. Look, yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting. I think from my point of view, absolutely why I do performance reviews with my team is because I want to get the best from them. But I also acknowledge that some of our managers, it's because they're told to, or they don't necessarily understand the reason why a performance review gets you to a better place. So we're going to kind of explore this and pick this a little bit apart and try to understand why these things have happened and why we've got to this place where, you know, performance and performance reviews become a bit of a blocker to high performance in your business, mainly because the way that we've always done it still seems to be the norm. It still seems to be, I'm a manager, I have to do a performance review, but I'm not quite sure why I'm doing it, why it's going to help me, and how it's going to help that person. So there definitely will be managers in your business that get it, that will work through it, and they're probably the ones that are getting the best performance out of their teams, and others that maybe don't. So this is a statement by de Goose. It was basically from a Harvard Business Review right back in 1998. So we're talking, you know, this is 20 odd years ago. But it says the ability of a workforce in an organisation to learn faster than those in other organisations constitutes the only sustainable competitive advantage at the disposal of a learning organisation. So a lot of the work that we're doing in Seasalt is starting to look at the organisation as a learning organisation. One of the things that need to be made up in that, things like personal mastery, you know, team learning, sort of various mental models that how people see the world, and some of the limitations around systems thinking and having that approach. And you know, what this statement says is that we've got to be mindful that in order to be long term as a business, we've got to help people to get better at what they do, and we've got to help them to learn quickly in their roles to get better at what they do. So learning and development of people is incredibly important to high performance. Without people getting better, people will just stagnate and stay where they're at. So that's, you know, sort of a good point. And the other bit around systems thinking is that there's a, you know, a system around a system archetype. If any of you've done any systems thinking work, it's called shifting the burden. And for me, a lot of what we do around appraisals and performance review is kind of just shifting the burden. We're not actually dealing with the problem. And so the issue we've got is people's performance. We want people to perform better than they do right now. And so what we've done in the past is that we've put an annual appraisal in place, and that's the traditional kind of way of doing things. It's a symptomatic solution. It's someone needs to be told how they performed last year. Let's meet with them once a year. Let's tell them how they did. And that's pretty much how the conversation goes in my experience. And that can keep going, and you know that people, you know, will keep going along that because that's what we're supposed to do as an employee. My manager's going to sit me down every year. They're going to tell me what I did last year, and then we'll carry on. They may set some objectives for me, and I'm going to work on it. And that kind of used to work. The problem with that is that after 12 months, or within that 12 months, what you get is some underperformance that maybe doesn't get addressed. You get some high performance that gets unnoticed or not collected. That person then starts to stagnate. They don't do as well as they would have done, and then they start to lack motivation. You then have high turnover, you know, attrition rates increasing, and issues that are more business level. So we take it from that individual all the way to impacting on strategy because our talent aren't engaged in their work and they're not willing to perform. So realistically, really the fundamental solution then should be that we should be giving continuous feedback and helping people learn where they currently are to give them the self-direction they need to be able to develop themselves. And what that allows people to do is to have continual improvement, much like you would do with a product. You continually improving and innovating and moving things forwards. What we tend to do is not apply that to our people. It allows them to get some personal mastery. And what I mean by that is that they get their craft. They're not just competent, they're leaders in those areas. And then they they buzz off each other in a team, and they're able to bring each other on. And a really solid team is one that can work with each other in any environment, can conflict with each other, share opinions, and work their way through problems and deal with complexity and issues around the business really, really well. So for me, the burden that we've done here is we've shifted to the annual appraisal. The other sort of shifting of burden that we've done, or what seems to happen in businesses, is that if you get underperformance, what tends to happen in this sort of top bit here around the annual appraisal is that that's then changed to HR getting involved, or performance improvement plans. That is almost like, you're not performing, so we're going to do this to you. And then what you then have is, all the way through this sort of dotted line, is that HR get involved when there's a performance issue, when actually what this should really look like is developing our managers better. So the fundamental solution is getting your managers in a really great place to have great conversations more regularly, so that they can keep a track of what's happening around their team, building better rapport with their teams, and helping each of those team members connect to their own purpose. Okay, so let's get more deeper into high performance then. In the questions in the chat box, what would you say are our blockers to high performance, or blockers in your business? Just drop them in that question box. Okay, yeah, managers that suppress it, time, yeah. Yeah, time, resources, other people's emergencies, things that are urgent and important for other people, absolutely. Bureaucracy, manager competence, confidence and engagement. Manager too many direct reports. Okay, so two big teams that they probably spend their life just doing one-to-ones and not really being able to do their own work, being too busy. Yeah, so there's a lack of knowledge, lack of feedback. Okay. Okay, brilliant. So, okay, so there's some interesting stuff around risk there. Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, so it's your risk in sort of governance, if you like, of how people go about their day, and the sort of policies and procedures that are in place. Sometimes they could actually be blockers to people doing their work. The structure of how your business is made up could also be a blocker. Inconsistent standards. Okay, so no one comments. Okay, brilliant. So what does really good look like? And we're going to cover a little bit of that in a minute. Brilliant. Okay, so don't want to think of the long-term benefit, because someone else will manage them soon. So they're not going to be my problem in the future. So I'm not going to do anything. Okay, there's so much to unpick there. Here's some of mine that I came up with. I've gone with sort of short-termism, because high performance, we tend to sort of look at the here and now, the next 12 months. And if you're only doing an annual appraisal, you can only go that far. Whereas if you've got a monthly check-in, you can continually to be forecasting further ahead 2 or 3 years. And you can also have really great career conversations with somebody and really understand where people want to be. Certainly in my military career, I was always encouraged to look at least 5 years ahead. Where do I want to be? And in that structure, there's a rank system, and you're always looking for promotion to the next rank upwards. That's generally how it works. So high performance is demonstrated by how the sort of rank slide you've got on your shoulders. So in my world, what I've experienced is that looking 5 years ahead is the norm. What I've also experienced more recently with my team is that actually a lot of team members don't look that far ahead. They don't have a really robust career plan. They don't really know where they're going. And some people just fall into jobs. And so they're kind of working for you because kind of mostly their motivation is income. So trying to get to a place where you can encourage teams and team members to look at least 2 or 3 years ahead is something that we've been trying to do. And actually our paperwork is designed to have a career set of paperwork that is channeled purely for 3-year thinking and reflection on where I've been and where I want to get to. So short-termism is absolutely a blocker. We need to be thinking further ahead. And then we take this cause and effect approach to high performance, is that if someone goes on a course, therefore they are going to be better at what they do, when in reality it's much more complicated than that. We want someone to go on a course, yes, but we've got to practice what they've learned on that course in the workplace. So cause and effect, just thinking that we're going to do a quick win, just get them on that course because they're a high performer, and in order to keep them, I'm going to tick that box because they think I'm investing in them, but do nothing after that, then you're not going to get what you're really, really looking for. In my opinion, we tend to look too far backwards, and if it's only an annual appraisal, you end up spending way too much time looking at what someone has done 12 months ago in some cases, and by the time you've got to that stage, the moment is over. So if you get to a point where you can do monthly check-ins or more regular check-ins, it stops being backward looking and it's in the moment, and it stops encouraging managers to look for opportunities to give feedback, and rather than waiting for that one-to-one, if it is monthly, do it in the moment, especially if it's recognition. Make sure that we're rewarding hard work all the time instead of looking for what people are doing wrong most of the time. And for me, we're still stuck in an industrial generation. We're still stuck in this mindset that the 1800s is that people are here to do jobs and they must do that jobs, when I think most of the the new generations that are coming through, they're looking to partner with businesses that are connected to their beliefs and values and purposes. Certainly we're seeing that more evidently, and some of the research is backing that up. And sort of the Gen Z population that are coming through into our businesses now want to work for that employee value proposition that supports their own motivation. So we've got to get our heads out of this industrial generation. And for me, the other problem here is that we don't develop leaders and managers early enough. We put people that have developed great skills and operationally great, and we promote them into management jobs. And we expect them to then just be able to go, right, do a performance review with somebody, having had no training or development whatsoever. And I'm not saying that we're perfect at this, because we're not. But problems that caused from poor leaders modeling poor leadership behavior is also blocking high performance across your business. And so we have to find a way right from the top all the way down to develop your leaders so they become more emotionally intelligent and able to have better one-to-ones with their people. So that then gets modeled to those people that are joining our business. So when they become managers and leaders, they model good behaviors of leadership and management. Okay. I wonder whether it's a chance just to pop some mics on, and I can't see you or anything like that. So I just really quick what does high performance, let's go with just look like, and you can just shout some words out. Hopefully you can turn your mics on, and that's okay. So what does high performance look like to you? Anyone want to go for it? Hopefully, if mics aren't working, just pop it in the question. It's just nice to know that people are out there. That's all. Okay. Oh, because is mute being put on permanently for everyone? Okay, cool. We'll sort that out in a bit. Just drop it in the questions box then, please. Everyone pulling in the same direction. Yep. Energized. Okay. Regular check-ins. Regular engaged and energized. Collaborative. Okay. Employee engagement. Okay. Interesting, Lauren. It'd be sort of interesting. Employee engagement means so many different things to so many different people. So outcomes. Okay. So people achieving things. Brilliant. Connected. Okay. So like just from looking at high performance and what you think high performance, there's a range of things already. So you can see how complex this is. Let's go with sound like. So what does it sound like? What are you hearing when high performance is happening? Is it high volume? Is it quiet? Okay, motivation, positivity. Okay, high volume. Okay, cool. Buzz. Okay. So as these things are coming through, hopefully you can see these in your screens as well. I'm reading them out. Hopefully you can see them, but I'm reading them out just in case you can't. Not necessarily good sales. Chloe, that'd be interesting to pick apart a little bit later. Noisy, filled with ideas, people contributed, energetic. Okay, cool. So you can get in the theme. So it looks like, you know, people collaborating together, and it sounds like, you know, it's energetic. There's a buzz. There's volume usually involved in here. Okay. Lastly, then, you know, you can't see the questions. Okay, so I'll keep reading them out. The comments that come in through. Last one then is, what does it feel like to you? What does high performance feel like? Sometimes this is the hardest one to get. I wonder if I bring that there, whether you can now see that. So what does high performance feel like? Energy. Okay, so it feels like you're getting somewhere. Positive, energetic, dynamic, decisions made quickly. Okay, exciting, motivating, fun. Okay, fun, brilliant. And sometimes we forget the fun. We really do forget that actually, in being in a high performance environment, it's really exciting. It's a great place to be, and it's energizing. It's, you know, self-fulfilling to some extent. It's, you know, things are happening. So just by exploring that, you can see how emotive high performance can be, and that, you know, it's really difficult and complex. High performance isn't just, you know, we're going to, you know, someone's going to be demonstrating, because we have up and down days as well. Keeping high performance right at the top every single day is almost impossible. And I kind of want to share some of the sporting sort of stories that I know about, and one from Strictly Come Dancing as well, which is hopefully a spin-off, you know, not really quite sporty, because I know I probably spend too much time talking about sports. Andy Murray for me is a great example of high performance and how high performance comes about, what it looks like, sounds like, feels like. Andy Murray took a really long time to get to the stage where he was winning Wimbledon. And if you look back in his journey, he struggled with his temperament. He struggled with, you know, his sort of his psychology. And if any of you have read Tim Galloway's The Inner Game, you can sort of see kind of what was happening to Andy Murray as he started his career. He switched his coach. He went to Maresmo, and he worked on his temperament. And then he switched back to Ivan Lendl, and then started to work back on his game. So what he's done, instead of looking at high performance as I've just got to get better at tennis, he broke everything down and started to look at it piece by piece, build piece. But what is also true about Andy Murray is that he had a sense of direction. He had a sense of purpose. It was intrinsic motivated. He knew where he wanted to get to, and he knew what he wanted to achieve. And you can sense the frustration on him that he's currently not able to play through injury, because he's not able to fulfill the things that he loves doing. And that word love doesn't get used enough in performance, because if we really, really love what we do, it's so much easier to perform really, really high. And we've got to look at those blockers that are stopping people doing what they really, really want to do. But the point here is that it's long term. It's not a short term win. It's not get to number one, done it. It's actually really progressively, and it's also in cycles, because the season moves around. The other thing that's ironically in cycles is British cycling. They kind of work on four-year progression cycles. And so yes, there's new talent coming in, but they're always working towards the Olympics. And so there's things every single year that they work towards. They also do that marginal gain, the 1% thing of removing, you know, all of the blockers and barriers from their talent performers delivering on what they need to deliver. So things like, you know, taking, they're traveling around the world, taking, you know, beds and, you know, pillows with them. And this is the Dave Brailsford kind of approach of, you know, the marginal gains approach to it. Again, it's long term. It's progressive. It's constant learning, constant development. There's also tons of feedback, as there was with Andy Murray. Coaching is constantly there. And then I want to look at Strictly Come Dancing. It's kind of, you know, in the moment, and it's going on now. But if you look at the celebrities that when they first started a few weeks ago, they were okay. And all the way up to currently now, they are already starting to look like dancers. And by the time you get to the end of it, they are excellent at what they do, and that's because there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of feedback, there's a lot of learning, there's loads of guidance, loads of support, and it's over a longer period of time. And the longer they practice at it, the more space they've got, the more permission they've got to fail, the more likely it is they're going to get better. But also the ones that really want it are the ones that you can see really absolutely push really hard and move through to end up in the final. So there's some real themes and trends there around high performance and how you get there. And you have to look around at your teams to sort of see who are the people that we're trying to push too much upon. How are we expecting too much of them too soon? Certainly if you've got graduates or new joiners, we do expect them to get through their probation really quickly, and we expect them to be performing as soon as possible. Usually the reality is very different to that. Also, you'll have some people that have been in your business for a long time, and how many of those have not been stretched or challenged or guided or coached so that you can get more performance out of them. There's also a dark side for me to performance management and for high performance, and these are some of the things that you talked about why managers might do it, and some of the things that impact on those one-to-ones. We tend to just ignore underperformance because it's easier to not have to deal with it. I don't have that difficult conversation, so I'm just going to let it go. And then all of a sudden you have either a grievance or a disciplinary starts to come out of it, or that person leaves, and actually you wanted to keep them in the business. Redirection of goals and constantly changing objectives is difficult for anyone. We want to have an end goal, and objectives should just support that end goal all the way through, and that needs to be collaborative. The goals that you just can't achieve are big problems for people, and so if you're expecting too much for them, it's not going to work. And this blame culture where we tend to say, well, it's not my fault, it's someone else's that things didn't happen, trying to remove that and taking ownership and accountability of the work that we do. Favoritism or recency bias or halo bias, these unconscious biases are playing out all the time. They're a human thing, we can't get away from it, but we've got to find a way to sort of know the triggers in ourselves. When am I being more favorable to somebody else, and how can I challenge myself on that? How can we help our managers to challenge themselves on it? Believe it or not, people manipulate the data, they gamify the system, and if you've got a performance review process and it's rated, guess what, there probably is some gamifying going on, and they will be manipulating data, especially if they've got some favoritism going on. Hopefully that doesn't happen in every business, but it does happen in some. I don't think we have it. We don't have ratings in our business, so we try to remove that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. They avoid that difficult, that sort of underperformance ignorance, which is that avoiding the difficult feedback. Non-compliance, so they don't do it. Some of you have already said that they don't do the reviews. We've had that issue as well. They don't review the learning, and they don't use the learning. So the application of what have you done here, what have you learned from that process, and how are you going to get better is part of that conversation, and sometimes that doesn't take place. So I've mentioned purpose in the past, and this is a quote by Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote the book Flow, one of the gurus of positive psychology. And his research really looks really closely into sort of why people do what they do and how do they get in the moment. Those, in the moments where you lose time, lose sense of time, and we want to try and get our teams into that. Usually it's in the creative world, it's painters, it's musicians, it's even surfers. For you see it down here. Certainly, if I go out and do running, you lose a sense of time. So getting people to be connected to their personal purpose, and that's sometimes a bit fluffy for people to talk about, but there's real power in it. So managers having conversations with their team members to really understand what is it that gets you out of bed, and it means that I'm just going to do it. I'm going to give a little bit more. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've done at Seasalt, and hopefully I'm not moving through this too quickly. Again, please pop questions in the questions tab if you've got them, and I'll answer them right at the end. This is what we've started to do. Certainly over this period of time, we in 2019 we launched our new one-to-one process, and that was a monthly check-in. We'd previously done that every 6 months. And we launched it as a one-to-one on a check-in basis every month because we wanted to increase the number of conversations and start to begin to create a feedback culture. We'd started to do a lot of work previous to that on emotion intelligence with our leaders and managers. helping them understand how they pitch up to work, and if they are stressed or burnt out, then they're not going to get the best from their people. And so the next stage for us was to implement a performance development process rather than performance reviews, to help them have better conversations, be coaches as managers, and start to support their teams to get better. What we found out really this year is that we were having that situation where some managers weren't having those conversations. It was working better with our retail teams because they were closer together at the time, and they were able to initiate it within the working day. Whereas at head office, it wasn't working as well. And now that we're more remote and we're all working from home at head office, very limited in the stores for the remainder of this week, we were seeing that these one-to-ones weren't taking place. So in the last couple of weeks, we've established a values-based success framework, which basically outlines for every role what is expected of that role against our values. So if we were to take innovation as an example, as one of our values, all the way from a lower member of our team all the way to our senior executive, we actually mapped it out. And the reason for mapping it out was not only to tell that individual what is expected of them, but so they could see all the way up what was expected of their managers, the senior leaders, and the executives at their levels. And so there was total transparency on what was expected against those values and how we pitch up to work. What we also then started to do was start to look at the touch points of performance in our business. And actually there's one further, one previous to probation for me that I haven't put in here, and that's interview. So at interview, we generally are sort of looking for suitability and capability for a role. But sometimes it's usually, do they meet the basic criteria on a job description, or do they have the qualifications required for that job? And we don't maybe spend enough time really understanding whether this person fits or not, usually because we're all quite very busy. So getting in interviews and recruitment right really helps with the succession planning in the future, because if you're thinking 2 or 3 years ahead and not just thinking about what you need now, you can then start to recruit for positions that may be 2-3 years down the line. That means during probation, you're constantly checking to see whether that person is suitable or capable for the role. And that when you're having your monthly check-ins, or however long your probation is, for us it's 3 months, and we have 4 weekly check-ins in the probationary period. By the time we get to that end of that 3 months period, it should be a no-brainer. That person, we should have recruited really well. We should have a great job description that helps that person know what they should be doing, and we should be starting to see that person demonstrate some capability within the role. That means that monthly check-ins are about reviewing objectives, having well-being conversations, and someone else has already mentioned this already about doing those, having career conversations, but making sure reward and recognition is being addressed. When people do good work, we say thank you for it, and we do something about it, maybe bigger and wider across the business. Our MDR is our management development review. That's our 9-box grid, and this is where managers are assessing the knowledge, skills, behaviours, and potential of every member in the business, so that we can start to understand what our talent might look like in the future. Because for us at Seasalt, it's equally a talent progression. It's a talent reason why we do one-to-ones, and that's why we want to get high performance from our people. And then that means that our board can review that 9-box grid twice annually, and we can start to look at succession in collaboration with our managers. I'm going to talk more about the 9-box in a minute, because there's some key bits about 9-box that are really, really important to mention. Over this period and over the last year, I've been developing a framework which is based around talent identification, because high performance is one thing, but if we're not enabling people to have the careers and retaining great talent in our business, then high performance gets lost. We don't recognise people in our business. But one of the problems with talent identification is it can be really quite subjective. It's usually down to the manager, how they are giving one-to-ones, and that manager's opinion. And so what I wanted to do was collect some of our tools together, and I'm going to talk about our tools in a minute, and start to give our people a bit more of a guidance on how that could work. So at the top, you've got our talent section, and the KSB's knowledge, skills, and behaviours is that challenge our managers to really understand what are the knowledge, skills and behaviours that you need for that role, and making sure that the person delivering on that role has that knowledge, has those skills and demonstrates those behaviours. If that's not aligned, there's some job description work needs to be taken place. There needs to be some conversations taking place to realign that. And also, it's getting that manager to look at those knowledge and skills behaviours and make sure that they're fit for the business in the future. So do they tie in with the overall strategy of the business? And if they don't, then we've got to help people moving through. The reason for that is that some of the research at the moment is indicating that some jobs and some skills are 3 years in duration. What that means is that someone could be coming out of university at the end of this year or in sort of May next year with a degree, and within 3 years that degree will be completely useless and irrelevant to a business. So that's a real big problem. So we've got to keep a good fresh eye on what do we need in the business, what knowledge is there, and what do we need to continually improve. Making sure that talent had those purposeful conversations, so what is that person's purpose in life? What do they want to achieve? Where do they want to get to? And again, that can be a bit too grand for people. So you can maybe look at what you want to get out of Seasalt for us. There's also that observation, and this doesn't happen enough. The observation and the analysis and assessment of people's performance doesn't happen enough. Because we can have our one-to-one check-in, we can have our conversation, but if I'm not looking at what people are doing, how they're doing it, how they're delivering it, is it timely, is it to sort of where we want to get to, is it in line with our values, and answering those questions. They could be good in one area, but not good in another. We need to challenge ourselves on those sort of things. And then encouraging our managers to have discussions with each other. So-and-so in my team has done some work for you in the last few months. Can you tell me about how that's worked for you? Has it worked? Get some peer-to-peer feedback on your team's performance. And that way you remove some of that subjectivity. In the ID section, these are our tools. So we've got an iBox grid, and I said I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We have 360s that we use at the moment just for the heads of department, but we will use with managers in the future. We have a personal development program or procedure, so that the PDP side of things, rather than performance review, so it's performance development program. And then our HR business partners are absolutely critical to not just talent identification, but high performance and supporting managers. And I'll talk a little bit about how we do that. And then it's about energizing those people and motivating and leading and providing a vision for our people that's clear, that's fair, that gets them on board, and communicating with them on a regular basis. That's about them knowing what positions are available, what's likely to come up in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, so that they have a target to go for, without which they're just kind of doing work in the moment, in the current month or 2 months or 6 months or 12, and they're not looking at how they can improve themselves, so they can never even get to close to being personal mastery or being self-directed in their career. So those things are things that we've been working through, and we're only really just moving forward into this area. So I want to talk about those kind of key tools that are in that ID section. As I said, we do monthly one-to-ones. They're aligned to the business. So how do we align them to the business? We communicate our strategy annually, because things are changing so regularly. Rather than having a 3-year plan, it's usually an annual plan that's got a 3-year purpose attached to it. We have our purpose throughout the business of helping people of all shapes and sizes dress creatively and beautifully. So it's aligned to that all the time. But the strategy gets replayed on a regular basis, so that if any tweaks or changes take place, we're always on it. It's about tracking progress and giving feedback. It's about relationships, managers caring, absolutely, giving a crap about their people. That's really, really important, and having a mindset around careers and helping people go. The conversations are always best about with that individual to challenge themselves on, where am I now? Where do I want to get to, or where am I going, and how am I going to get there? So if I've got a 3-year plan, I can work back, incrementally to sort of, what am I going to do now to be able to achieve where I want to get to in 3 years' time, and getting the support from the line manager. The line managers and each individual need an agenda for each of those sessions. They need to have a plan of what they're going to talk about, why they're going to talk about it. Usually we encourage individuals to bring that agenda rather than the manager, because this is an opportunity for that individual to focus on what they want to get out of Seasalt and have a conversation with the manager to be supported. We encourage empathetic listening, and that's that coaching of, don't just be looking at your emails while you're chatting to your employee. You should be really in the moment, really trying to understand what that person needs and why they need it. Using coaching, or we use the GROW model. So John Whitmore's kind of approach to high performance coaching for managers. So what is the goal? Where are you now in terms of reality? What opportunities do you have? And what is the will and where around that coaching for you to do it? So trying to base our conversations around that, so you can see, where am I now? Where am I going? And how will I get there? Kind of underpins that. And then having that real future focus, really pushing our people to think further ahead than just the next month, just the next 6 months or 12. Start to think about how you're going to have an impact, not just on Seasalt, but on your own personal careers. I mentioned we have a 9-box grid, and this is ours. It wasn't developed by me, it's actually by a colleague, Susanna, in our team. And she is one of our HR business partners, and actually we work together to develop this 9-box grid. What we have done, and what we hadn't done maybe when we first started this, was really be clear what we meant by high performance and what we mean by high potential. And so recently, some of the work we've been doing this year is to really clarify with our managers, what does high performance look like? Much like what we said, what we've done here is, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What should you be seeing? Our success framework really helps from a values point of view, but it tied into this, people need to look at those knowledge, skills and behaviours. Are people delivering on their objectives? How many of those objectives get pushed through to the next month, the next month, the next month? And is underperformance being addressed? It's a tool. So what we tell our managers is that it isn't for use to tell someone where they sit, because there's a couple of reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. First of all, if someone's a red flag and they are underperforming and they're not demonstrating great deal of potential, that's not great news for someone, and it can be articulated in a much different way. It can be said, right, so right now, where do you think you are? Coaching conversation, ask them whether they think whether they're achieving or not, and if they're not self-aware enough, then obviously you need to give that feedback, and negative feedback is still good. That person needs to know where they're starting, and then you can observe them and give them stretching and challenging objectives that's going to pull them out of that red flag position. Most people tend to sit around that solid talent area, and actually that's not a bad thing. We encourage our managers to realise that being solid talent is kind of where we want to be. We want people to be delivering in their role and showing some potential. And the very few people are future leaders. And the reason why we don't tell people that they're future leaders is because if you don't have a position for them to move into or promote into, that can equally demotivate somebody, and it just puts them off, because great, I've been told I'm brilliant, but there's nothing for me to do. I'm going to start looking outside of the business because I know that I'm good enough, or I'm being told I'm good enough, so I'm going to see whether I actually am good enough. I'm going to leave the business. So there's some real risk involved in using this. So we use it as a tool rather than telling people where they actually are. And also it needs to be monthly. So you notice in the ID section, it was cyclical. It was like this, these things need to be continually used. They don't happen just once every now and again. While we communicate them twice a year to the board, these should be happening in conversations with HR business partners every single month, so that you can continue to look at what's going on, keeping our managers in the mindset that we're performance focused and we're looking at how we improve people. We also use a 360, and I've mentioned emotional intelligence previously in the work that we've done. And this 360 is a leadership climate indicator that is from PSI Talent. They were formerly JCA Global, and we worked with them on their leadership climate indicator because we'd already developed our leaders in leadership climate and how to create a leadership climate, and then we wanted to ask their teams whether they were actually doing it or not. Thankfully, most were, and we're moving forwards on it. And so what we use is this green side. That's where we want our people to be. We want them to be visionary. We want them to stretch people and challenge and encourage and collaborate, be trusted as a leader and appreciative. But we don't want them to be rigid. We don't want them to be depending on their senior managers to take the responsibility for decisions. We don't want to avoid difficult decisions. We don't want them to be too demanding of people, and that's that asking too much, the unattainable goals. Certainly don't want them aggressive. And actually, competitive sometimes gets challenged, because certainly from our teams, we've I've heard people say, well, I want people to be competitive. It's not about not being a competitive externally as a business. It's more about relationship competitive, that trying to get a win-lose over my peer. I want leaders to collaborate and I want them to work together. I don't want them to compete against each other, because that just removes that sense of team. So from a high performance point of view, when you look at those models and the things that we use, what we're trying to encourage people to collaborate more effectively, to be open and responsive, and create these climates that people can be successful in. They can fail in, but they also feel that they can say what they want to say when they need to say it, and challenge perspectives. We're working on trying to make sure that the foundations of high performance for me is trust. If I trust the business, if I trust my manager, if I connected to my sense of purpose and everything is lined up, then I'm likely to deliver more. If I've got a sense of autonomy over how I do it, what I do, I'm more likely to give a little bit more. I have a sense of continual improvement, and I'm responsible for that. When I'm self-directed, while guided and coached, then I'm likely to deliver more. And there's, I can share a load of research on this. There's tons of it, and happy to direct people to it if you need to find it. But usually this is kind of what we're seeing. That sort of sense of psychological safety that gets talked about quite regularly. A sense of emotional intelligence, knowing when I pitch up, how I pitch up, and how I work my best, and having that conversation with my line manager is a great place to be as a relationship side of things, and a good place to get high performance. So finally, I wanted to sort of talk through how does that work. We've focused quite lengthily on the individual. Now I want to look at very just in this statement on teams, because if you can get the individual performance right, then teams need to have harmony. And this statement, again, in the Living Company, is a Harvard Business Review article, again by Goose. He's talked about birds that flock learn faster. So when birds come together, when they flock, they tend to work closely with each other. They work off each other. If they've got to survive, they support each other. And when one moves, the other ones move as well. And in the organisations, it's exactly the same. When we can bring employees together, and we can help them flock, and we can help them work closely, collaborate, and have a safe space to do it, then they're usually going to learn faster and perform better as a result. The last two slides then is really some examples of how we're doing this. So this is from 2019. We'd obviously wanted to run this analysis this year. We haven't bothered for obvious reasons, but this is it's actually the bottom 6 stores and our top 5 stores from 2019. So they were from a sales performance perspective. So on the right you've got T1 to 5, and on the left you've got bottom 1 to 1. It should be 6. There's a icon missing on the 6th one there, and it demonstrates that when you've got high engagement on the right hand side, and the T side, you can see that the first green column is our engagement. So they're highly engaged, and that what we mean by that is that they're proud to work for Seasalt. They're not looking to move in the next couple of years. They would promote Seasalt as a great place to work, and all of those kind of engagement questions. That's there. And then when you look to the right, they're aligned to the company. They collaborate as high as well. There's one that's a little bit lower than others at T3. But they've got enablement, they are developing themselves, and managers are rated incredibly high when we look at our high performing stores. Contrast that to our lower performing stores. They're our bottom, and luckily we don't have any really that are crashing out. Things are difficult as we know, but and this is from 29, so we obviously haven't asked those questions this year for obvious reasons. But you can see where engagement's much lower as a whole, but also the management response, even though it's still high and it's still over 80%, it's lower in most cases than the top. And also when you look at enablement and learning, they're both lower. So we're looking at high performance and actual output in terms of sales figures. We can see in our stores that if we can help people connect really, really well, that they collaborate more effectively, that their managers are really proactive at developing their teams, and they feel this sense of worth, then actually we're going to get a better result. The other side to this is also that learning and people, and we talked about continual improvement throughout the slides, is the yellow line talks about a learning curve, and that's just more of a visual representation of a learning curve. People learn loads and loads and loads of stuff in their first 6 to 12 months. And then when you get to around 2 years, that kind of learning tends to sort of drop off. And this is, we did this analysis in response to a presentation I saw by Josh Burson, who was at Deloitte at the time. And he was talking about learning curves, and that people's attention and engagement, and people start to stop doing things, performing at their best when they're not stretched. So if you look at that learning curve, it starts to drop off. And you can see the comparison at 2018 and 2019, 18 being green and 19 being blue, that we were seeing that people's responses to a learning development were also dropping off in a similar sort of rate. You can see that we did some work in 2019, so our 1 to 2 years we've started to peak up a little bit, but we've still got work to do for those people that have been in the business the longest. So what we have to do is try and keep that curve doing an S, rather than it being an upside down U. We want that to be an S bend. So we want people to peak, and we want them to drop back up again and get stretched, and we want them to perform more. So constant continual improvement will challenge and stretch those people. If we only do that annually, you'll miss those opportunities to stretch your people, and you'll miss the opportunities to get the high performance that you need over a longer period of time within those teams. So, and that's, those are real figures. Those are exactly what we're seeing. And obviously you can see that, weirdly, those that have been in the business the longest, peak back up for, and because they've sort of seen a lot happening. So that's pretty much kind of what we're seeing. That is it for all of my slides. I hope you were able to track that. I know that Mark's going to, it's been recorded and it'll be available on the website afterwards. But should we go to questions? I have no idea how long I've got left.
James, that was fantastic. Firstly, thank you. There's so much of that I'm stealing for Cogito, so I'm ready to put some of that into practice myself. So, and I hope everybody has gained something from that. So we are probably close to the end, but there's a couple of questions that have come through, which I think would be good if we could answer. And then if anyone's got any additional questions, please pass those on. So James, the first question, which might, I'm not sure specifically what it relates to, but is how do you measure the impact of your learning? So particularly with the learning v tenure slide.
Yeah, so we take a business view on learning. So rather than looking at bums and seats or how many courses that take place, and we do evaluate the sort of what people feedback, and we gather feedback regularly. But we look at sort of output as our measure. So each year, from a learning point of view, we align what we need to do to achieve for the business, to add value back on the business, and then we measure against those. So I suppose if you were looking at our sustainability work, some of that work that we'll do next year, I've already highlighted as part of our strategy, and then we'll measure how well we've developed our teams based on the metrics for the sustainability strategy, not ours, so that we can ensure that we're really adding value to business need rather than just a learning need. I'm really passionate about the fact that we get hooked up too heavily on learning as the output, when realistically it's performance. And I'm just appointed a new role. It's a performance and development manager, not a learning development manager, because we want to, we acknowledge that as human beings we learn every single day. Organisations learn as well, and what we want to do is help people to do that better for the business to achieve what it needs to do. So we look at those measures and we try to align to them as best we possibly can.
Fantastic. Some of the other questions are more for me than you, James. So in terms of recordings and sharing of the slides, yeah, we'll certainly do that. We'll put information on the website. And then, James, I don't know if there's the slides you're happy to share on a bridge version, but I guess we can work out a way we can share that with people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if there are no further questions then, again, James, thank you so much. That's been fantastic. So I hope everybody did both enjoy the session and also has gained something from it. From a Cogito perspective, we'd love to get some feedback from you. As I mentioned earlier, this is our second webinar, so any feedback is useful. We're also very keen to understand what you would like us to present webinars, events and white papers on next year. So we'll send a survey through to everybody who's attended. So just tell us what is going to be important to you in 2021 so that we can create content which is going to be relevant to you. So that just brings this webinar to a close. Once again, thank you, James. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to hearing your feedback soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.